Hello everybody and welcome to Italy, home of some of the best spaghetti you can find. Mamma mia, spaghetti pasta. How would I like to show you a hot, steaming, delicious, piping hot plate of spaghetti for you today? Get it? Get it? Spaghetti code? Get it? Spaghetti code? Yandere dev use spaghetti code? Yeah. Take number 2. Hi. So a little while ago, I tried out the game Yandere Simulator, and to my surprise, it ran decently well. Considering the fact that I have a beastly godly PC, right? But something stuck out to me, right? Something really charged my brain fumes, and that was that the game ran worse than Grand Theft Auto 5. Now, you see, I had been very interested in the Yandere dev coding for a long time now, considering I tutor programming now in a college course, and that I somewhat know what I'm talking about. I ain't a professional by any means, but I do understand the basics. And after being told that Yandere dev has some of the most atrocious programming we've seen to man, I have been very, very curious to find where I could possibly get this coding. Well, after tweeting out about, hey, I want the coding, someone must have listened to my prayers, because 2 days later, the code got fucking leaked on GitHub. So yeah, we're gonna take a look at that. So jumping into this this video, I knew the code would be bad, but I had no idea, and I was not prepared for the level of severity that this code is at. I was browsing through the code, and I found one segment where there was at least 12 nestled if statements within his code. Jesus Christ! Now, I'm gonna educate you guys, right? Let me tell you about these if-else statements, because we all know that this man uses an if statement, right? An if statement is a conditional statement where the program and computer will check and make sure and take the memory time to process the information and say, hey, wait, is this true? Yes or no? If it's not true, they skip over it. If it is true, they execute everything inside of the brackets. So, with all of these if statements within a code, right, every single if statement in his line of code is checked by the computer. Henceforth, every if statement you see in a certain line of code, if that code is executed, that if statement will be checked and it will take processing time. And now, as you can imagine, this if statement, there's a lot of them in the code. And those of you that have, followed this type of, this Yandere dev stuff will probably already know this and understand. Everyone's said the same thing. Use a switch statement, use a switch statement. Well, you know what's funny? I was browsing through a lot of the code, and I actually saw Yandere dev have a script file that has a switch statement within the file. But right above that switch statement, there is an if-else statement that does the exact same fucking thing. He wrote this code just to prove that he knows how to write a switch statement. And as you can clearly see here, he does know how to write a switch statement.
Fortunately, it's not difficult at all to improve the code. Changing this to this only takes like 30 seconds. It's seriously not a big deal.
So the question I have for him is, why didn't he use it here, in this line of code, right? Look at this! This is it's organized by numerical values. That's perfect for a switch statement. Those of you who don't know what a switch statement is, I'll give you a brief rundown. As opposed to an if-else statement, where it checks every conditional to see if it's true or false, a switch statement will read the conditional from the beginning and jump to the correct address in the code. Typically, these switch statements are combined with break lines, which will pull you out of the brackets and move on to the next function or whatever you have past the switch statement. That is a very optimal way to do this type of coding. See, this right here, this is a line of code where he would organize what the student's definitions are based on the if-else statements. So if they would identify what the student ID is, and they would execute the correct method based on the ID. But he uses an if statement to check the ID versus using a switch statement to just read the ID and jump to that specific section in the code, which is what a switch statement does. It's a lot faster if you were to use a switch statement. See, look, I took the time out of my day to rewrite this specific portion of the code to work under a switch. And as you can see, whoa, it does the same thing, but more effectively. Now, I understand Yandere Dev has addressed this predicament here, and he's used the excuse that, oh, it's just code that executes once in one frame. It's just code that doesn't execute more than one frame. And to my response, that I say, well, okay, that might be true, but here's the thing, that's a very bad programming practice. You see, if you do not try to optimize every line of code, what is to say that you will get lazy with other code optimizations? The thing with coding is you have to think about the bigger picture. These things will stack up in time. If you keep using if-else statements and say, that won't make much of a difference, I'll just keep using if-else statements, your performance will begin to suffer. And that's probably why the frame rate in this game is so bad. That's a segment I will get into later. There are a lot of reasons as to why the frame rate is bad. Yandere Dev never uses switch statements. Actually, yes I do. Bro, I shuffled through a lot of this code. I looked for a switch statement. Unless there's one that I missed, which is highly likely, and in which case, you told me so. The main scripts that you're using don't have them, and that's a problem, and I really recommend that you fix them. Another really good example of very unoptimal coding that's present within his code, at least in this build, is that every student that is present within the game has multiple different values that they have to calculate within the code. So, let me further elaborate and break this down. The students are organized within methods, and these methods are executed within the game multiple times as the game progresses. So you see, every student in the game has different code to process because every student has a unique path find to them. They're all unique. They have different paths that they have to go to. And Unity is not very good at keeping these processes in the background. It's all rendered within the game's process. It's a really difficult thing to optimize. So every NPC in this game is being processed when you enter the scene. When the student spawns in, they're checking a bunch of conditions. A bunch of conditions that are not necessary to check. So, when it's 8 a.m., for example, a student will check, is it 8 a.m.? Where do I need to go? I need to go here, I will walk here. But then when it's 9 a.m., the student will go through that cycle once again. Ooh, is it 8 a.m.? No, it's not. Is it 9 a.m.? Oh, yes, I do. I have to go here. Oh, and then at 10 a.m. Ooh, it's 8 a.m.? No, it's not. It's 9 a.m.? Oh, no, it's not. 10 a.m.? Ah, yes it is. I will keep going here. And the script continues this way, and it checks every method like this. And it's so unoptimal, and I, at my current level of programming, can't give you a perfect solution to this because I don't have the programming ability just yet. I'm still a beginner, and maybe you could yell at me for that. I don't care. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but I certainly know that that's not how you want to run a game. Because this check runs every frame. Every frame checks with every student. How many students are there in the game? Oh, it gets worse. It gets a lot worse. Remember how I said, every student checks the time, like individually, 8, 9, 10, right? Well, what if I told you all the students run on a singular script, just one script that all define what they do? And he puts this single script into every single NPC in the game. Now, ooh, okay, that sounds like it makes sense, right? No, the problem here is he wants every NPC to be distinct from each other. He wants every NPC to react differently to different situations, and he wants them to go to different places. Now, the thing is, and how he tries to get around that with a single script, is he has a million different if statements checking to see if the student has a certain ID, and if the ID corresponds, it executes that if statement. So it puts the plug into Unity, and this script, almost 90% of the script that he writes doesn't run for a certain student. But the thing is, it checks almost 50 to 80% of the script that he writes because it's a bunch of if statements. So it's running a bunch of checks that aren't even necessary. He shouldn't be putting a single script into every NPC to have it checked to make sure that the ID is correct, to make sure it's running the correct, proper part of the code. What you should be doing is just writing a code for every NPC separately so that you're not making the PC go through a million different checks for no goddamn reason. If the student has this ID, ID 1 is senpai, by the way. Do this. Okay, if you dragged it into the senpai asset, it would return back 1. If you dragged it into a different character that had the ID 2, it would return 2. And student ID returns based on what character he drags the script in. So, it's checking for every ID, and this check happens every frame. This explains why, in my video, after killing all the students in the game using the debug command, my frame rate increased by 100 frames. In total, 100 frames on average. It's because the NPCs aren't there to be constantly checking things in the background.
Unity comes with a powerful tool called the Profiler, which allows us to see exactly how long the CPU takes to process every aspect of the game. Using the Profiler, we can see that the biggest problem affecting the frame rate is rendering. The scripts that affect the frame rate the most are the plugins I'm using for pathfinding and for displaying the game's graphical user interface. The next script that actually has an impact on the game's performance would be the script that governs student behavior, but only because there are 100 of those scripts running simultaneously. And even 100 of those scripts aren't actually having as much of an impact on the game as physics or animation.
Alright, let's break down this response to your frame rate thing. Obviously, Yandere Dev is very aware that the frame rate is not very good on his game. But the thing that he's doing is he's naively using the Unity Profiler to diagnose what's wrong with his game. So, pathfinding is basically AI coding in Unity. So, what he's saying here is the pathfinding is taking up a lot of cycles. Now, the thing about pathfinding is that pathfinding runs on code. Pathfinding will run on your script, and Unity's telling you, hey, we're taking a lot of time doing pathfinding. So, obviously, if you can't find an issue in the Unity, there's probably something in your script that's slowing down Unity's ability to pathfind. And like I said before, your pathfinding script has the character check multiple times every frame. Is it 8 a.m.? No. 9 a.m.? No. 10 a.m.? No. But the thing is, there's so many methods that the characters are checking at once when they're pathfinding that I can certainly say I feel like the issue is within your coding. You're going to need to break down this game and rewrite the coding again. Physics is another thing. Physics is literally code. I realize Unity does a lot of the coding work. Yes. But when you pile that on top of the fact that a bunch of your unoptimal code is in the background also doing things in the game, physics probably isn't a very intelligent thing to include in your game if your code is already doing a lot of work. Animation and rendering, yeah, that can take up a lot of CPU cycles. That is a given. I didn't do a lot of looking into that because I felt like that was a very acceptable thing to take up a lot of cycle. But a lot of the frame rate issues, Yandere Dev, is that the coding is unoptimal, the if-else statements are unoptimal, and all of the methods that a lot of these things are checking just take up too much time for the computer, especially if you have a bad computer. Yandere Dev has tried his best to have frame rate increasing concepts and applications in his game. That is why when I was playing earlier, we saw the people not animated and down the hallway. That is actually deliberate. That is something he implemented in the game to help with the frame rate. Now, surprise, surprise, guess what? That does not do a lot for the frame rate, because a lot of the frame rate issues are due to the cycles in the scripts. The issue is within the deep coding, and a lot of this coding is so messed up to the point where you might just need to rewrite a lot of it. Here we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty of why taking 6 years to make a game is a very bad idea in most cases, especially if you don't know what you're doing and you're not building from the ground up like most game developers do. Now, pathfinding. So you guys remember that part of the game where I had the doors closed and I started dragging a body, and a character started to try walking through the door to get to me? Yeah, you guys remember that? That is a pathfinding issue. And well, a lot of pathfinding issues are prominent within this game. Now, Yandere dev, from what I've been told, uses a service called A*, which was made really way back in the day, and has a lot of wonky pathfinding systems. Now, the reason he uses this versus Unity's pathfinding system, because guess what? Unity has a very nice structured pathfinding system in their engine. The reason he uses A*, which is arguably a lot worse than Unity, is because Unity didn't have this system until after Yandere started developing his game. So, because of how undynamically structured his code is written and how unflexible his code is, without having to entirely reconstruct his game, he would not really be able to use a new pathfinding system. So he's stuck with old, outdated technology for his game. The actual time the game is taking is hindering the performance and hindering the ability for the game to perform at its best. I could get into the drama of how he's taking forever and how he's quote-unquote taking money from people not working on a game, but I'm not going to get into that. I just want to talk about this game, how messy the coding is, and how it could be done a lot better. The assets within this game is a very big thing to unpack. So, starting from the set get-go, we have a lot of texturing issues that are derived from the way that Yandere dev organizes the game's assets. We'll start with the hair. The hair is the biggest thing that me and another person looked into. Yandere dev uses code to organize and disperse and distribute the different hair colors and hairstyles on the NPCs. Which, okay, that's fine on its own. It works. It works just fine. But here's another thing that's prominent within the code, is that the game gives you an option to let you customize NPCs. There is a feature for that. And within that feature, you will realize that these characters all have RGB values of 255 by default, despite the fact that their hair clearly is, say, green. The RGB values are still maxed out. Why is that? That's because what the actual RGB values are changing in the game's code is the Unity material rendering versus the actual coding, because the way that it's organized in code is that the hair is a specific object file with a certain color assigned to it. So, when you change the hair color in game to make the character look the way you want, it changes the material in Unity. So there's two different things that control and organize what color the hair will be. This will mess your game up, and it does mess Yandere Simulator up. Now, maybe this is a debug tool, I'm unsure. I haven't experimented with it myself too much, but I've talked to a lot of people about this. Whenever you go insane, Unity, he has a script compiler that will make Unity turn a character black using the material texture in Unity. However, when you return and restore your sanity, the Unity engine he has a script somewhere that will return the material back to default. And as a result, any changes made to the character before they went insane will be reverted. This issue is also prominent when you kill a character. You change their hair, and then you kill them, their hair returns back to the color it was prior. I didn't investigate why that happens, but I know exactly why the other thing happens. Another thing to point out about the way he uses assets is most of the assets he uses were not made by him or for the game specifically. Almost all of the assets. I say almost all because I can think of a few cases where they were specifically made for the game. Now, here's the issue with that, right? The issue with that is a lot of these assets you're taking have different optimization levels, and they're built for different types of games. So I watched a video, and I found a video of someone browsing through the Yandere simulator files and showing off the biggest files within the game. And surprisingly enough, you will not believe this, the biggest file within the game is a fucking toothbrush. A tiny fucking toothbrush is one of the biggest files in the game. Now, keep in mind, this was back in 2018. This might be different now, but this still shows an issue that comes from using other assets that are not made for your game. There are different optimization levels for your game, so a lot of the assets will sometimes not look like they belong where they should. And another thing is, if you're using a bunch of free assets, it's going to be very difficult to have a unique look to your game. Now, this is more of an artistic criticism than anything, but if your assets are all public, what's to stop someone from making another type of version of your game? Obviously, Yandere Dev doesn't have a lot of legal studies, doesn't have a lot of legal protection for his game just yet, which I would definitely recommend getting. But if he's using a bunch of public assets, for example, Japanese infirmary assets that he just colored pink, you know, people could just yank that. It's not that hard. The game in and of itself is just... The assets are another issue that's prominent within the game. There's so many more other things I'm going to talk about as well. This entire game is just a jumble. I am actually very impressed by the hole that this thing goes down deep into. Now you might be wondering, hey Spock, what's the point of this video? Why make the video? Why do you care about Yandere Simulator? Well, to be honest with you, I don't care too much. It's not a really big life-changing goal to me to have this game perfectly repaired. I just thought it would be an interesting topic to talk about, how the man has not improved his programming within the 6 years that he's been making the game. It's still full of if-else statements, which have been shown to be just ineffective in a lot of programming. And I just felt like you guys deserve a deeper look into the programming of this game, because it's all over the internet. People are shitting on this game everywhere, and I thought it'd be fun to really know what's going on under here. And, you know, now that I know, I don't think I want to know anymore. So do whatever you want. I don't care. Yandere Dev can keep living his life. I'm not coming at him. I don't care. But, you know, your programming's pretty bad, dude. You might want to fix it a little bit. Anyway, thank you all so much for listening and listening to me ramble about nerd stuff. That's all. Good night.